Hey, it's Brett, and you are watching Brett and Some Books. Today we are continuing The Plot to Seize the White House by Jules Archer. This is Part 1, Chapter 1. Perspiring on the raw wood platform in the broiling heat of a July day in Washington, Major General Smedley D Butler, retired, took off his coat, rolled up his sleeves, and opened his collar. His violent, deep-set eyes surveyed 10,000 faces upturned among the lean-tos, shanties, and tents on Anacostia Flats. Bums, riffraff, drifters, and troublemakers. Those were some of the descriptions being applied to the bonus army. Many of the ragged veterans who had marched on the Capitol had been sleeping in doorways and under bridges, part of the vast army of 12 million unemployed. Some were the same men who had fought under Smedley Butler in the Spanish-American War, the Philippines Campaign, the Boxer Rebellion, the Caribbean interventions, the Chinese intervention of 1927 to 1928, and World War I. Butler had come to Washington in 1932 at the urging of James Van Zandt, head of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, to lend moral support to veterans at a crucial moment. Congress had just voted down the Pt1 bonus bill to pay veterans the $2 billion bonus promised them in bonus certificates, payable in 1945. Bonus Army Commander Walter W. Waters, a former Army sergeant, and other leaders feared that their discouraged followers would now give up and return home. When Waters introduced Smedley Butler to the huge crowd of veterans gathered along the Anacostia River to hear him, he was greeted with an enthusiastic roar of acclaim that echoed through Washington like thunder. They all knew old Gimlet Eye, one of the most colorful generals who had ever led troops into battle. He was even more famous and popular among rank-and-file leathernecks, doughboys, and bluejackets for the fierce battles he had fought against the American military hierarchy on behalf of the enlisted man. He was also admired, respected, and trusted because of his one-man fight to compel Americans to remember their tragic war casualties hidden away in isolated veterans' hospitals. Smedley Butler was a wiry bantam of a man, shoulders hunched forward as though he braced against the pull of a heavy knapsack, his hawk nose prominent on the leathery face of an adventurer. Silhouetted against a flaming sunset, he made a blazing speech of encouragement in the blunt language that had kept him in hot water with the nation's highest-ranking admirals and generals, not to mention secretaries of state and navy. "If you don't hang her together, you aren't worth a damn," he cried in the famous hoarse rasp that sent a thrill through every veteran who had heard it before. He reminded them that losing battles didn't mean a war. "I ran for Senate on a bonus ticket," he said, "and got the hell beat out of me." But he didn't intend to stop fighting for the bonus, and neither should they, he demanded, no matter how stiff the opposition or the names they were called. "They may be calling you tramps now," he roared, "but in 1917 they didn't call you bums. You are the best behaved group of men in this country today. I consider it an honor to be asked to speak to you. Some folks say I'm here after something. That's a lie. I don't want anything." All he wanted, he told the cheering veterans, was to see that the country they had served dealt with them justly. He concluded his exhortation by urging, "When you get home, go to the polls in November and lick the hell out of those who are against you. You know who they are. Now go to it." Afterward, he was mobbed by veterans eager to speak to him. Until 2:30 a.m., he sat sprawled on the ground in front of his tent, listening sympathetically to tales of lost jobs, families in distress, and troublesome old wounds. He slept 3 hours, then woke to resume talks with the veterans. Sharing a bonus army breakfast of potatoes, hard bread, and coffee, he learned that the food was running out, and veterans were muttering about rioting against Congress if it did. Before he left for his home in Newtown Square, a small town outside of Philadelphia, he warned the bonus marchers, "You're all right so long as you keep your sense of humor. If you slip over into lawlessness of any kind, you will lose the sympathy of 120 million people in the nation." It was the government, however, that unleashed the violence. Under orders from President Herbert Hoover, General Douglas MacArthur led troops in driving the bonus army out of Washington at bayonet point and burning down their shack towns. By August 1st, rumors spreading from across the stronghold of the veterans, an encampment at Johnstown, Virginia, indicated that the infuriated bonus marchers were determined to organize a new nonpartisan political organization of veterans and wanted General Butler to lead it. Reporters asked him to comment. "I've heard nothing about it at all, although I was in Washington about 2 weeks ago to address the veterans," he replied with a shrug. "I've neither seen nor heard from Mr. Waters or any of the other of the bonus expeditionary force." Meanwhile, he phoned the governors of a number of states and won their agreement to provide relief for those veterans who wanted to return home. He phoned Waters in Washington to urge that the remnants of the bonus army break camp and start back home under this plan, and he issued a blast at the Hoover administration as heartless for its treatment of the veterans and its failure to help them, their wives, and their children return home without further humiliation. That November, lifelong Republican Smedley Butler took the stump for Franklin D. Roosevelt and helped turn Herbert Hoover out of the White House.